important role in the development of wholeness of children. So tinitingnan natin bilang teachers, bilang DepEd, na itong drug education na to ay bahagi talaga ng pagbuo sa kalinangan ng mga bata, no, sa kanilang pagkatao. From Miss Maria Alexandra Panis, I learned last week that fear arousal is not an effective form of providing information to our learners. Pareho tayo, ma'am. Yan din po. Isang major emphasis yun. Although I've been hearing that sa School of Division, it's just really something na parang if you hear again, and sa atin yung mga first time na narinig, that's really an awakening insight. Ayan. Ito kay Ma'am Almenda Sendanya, sabi niya, the majority are not drug users. So, and then when it comes to drug users, even treat them with compassion. Yan. So isa yun sa mga shinare ni Prof. Grace, no, na sometimes we can be obsessed targeting yung mga users, and yes, they need help, they need compassion, pero nami-miss natin that there's a bigger aspect of the population na pwede rin nating ma-prevent or ma-delay yung kanilang first use, or kung kaya nga, wag na silang gumamit ng drugs. Ayan. So thank you for sharing your insights from Ms. Far Fabiana. Teachers have big roles in drug prevention at this time. Ayan. So yes, and mapapansin natin ang dami talagang mga roles ni teachers, no? As long as you deal with children's lives, with people's lives, you really have lots of opportunities to serve them, and one of this is through drug prevention. Ayan, si Ma'am Emilia Ocampo, sabi niya, school is the second important setting for prevention substance use. Nakakatuwa yung pag-emphasis dun sa second. Kasi if nakinig kayong mabuti last week, sinabi merong pang first, yung most important setting. Hindi ko sasabihin kasi we encourage you to go back to the episodes kung may mga namimiss kayo para talagang napagtutuunan din natin ng attention yung bawat topic. Allow us to share some insights na binigay ng ating participants ahead from Dr. Mikey Soriano of SDO San Jose City. Sabi niya, proactively educating our learners so that they will be equipped with knowledge, attitude, and skills to say no to drugs in their formative years will be an investment in the future. Attending the NDEP webinar series is the first step so that we can solidify NDEP in schools. Yan. So meron tayong pinag-usapan last week about yung formative years, yung years ng mga bata na vulnerable sila, the adolescent brain. Those are really interesting discussions. If this is your first time to attend the webinar series, we encourage you, even require you, to go back to the first episode and watch it minute by minute para hindi niyo po ma-miss yung mga important concepts. Sabi naman po ni Ma'am Arlene F. Abeliar, our nurse 2 from Samar Division, substance use prevention should be a collaborative campaign from our learners, communities, and schools based on evidence. So hindi ito effort ng iisang tao but multiple stakeholders. And last, sabi po ng ating isa pang nurse in charge from SDO Pangasinan, sabi niya, fulfilling yung first episode, especially dahil may interaction, parang nag-create tayo ng online interaction with among our NDEP coordinators in the regions and divisions para na ring reunion ng mga trainees ng UPC. So for the information of all who are just watching, ang School of Division po in the past years has been running universal prevention curriculum trainings. So dahil ito po ay nasa pandemic tayo ngayon, this is our opportunity to emphasize again those principles and to reach out sa ating mga trainee on UPC. So again, thank you very much po sa inyong mga feedback. Last question na lang, kasi we are just really getting everyone on board para pag nag-lecture tayo, marami na kayong nanonood online. Last question na lang po, and please answer this in the comment section. How have you applied your learning last week in the past days? Kung meron lang po meron ba kayong naging chance na after last Tuesday that you listened to Professor Grace, meron kayong insight, principle na nakuha, tapos in-apply nyo agad siya, whether it's with your child or in your program, in the NDEP or the National Drug Education Program that you're implementing in your division or school, or maybe with your colleague at work. Meron po ba? We invite you to type them in the comments section, and we're excited to read them to know na talagang relevant po itong ating ginagawa. Sige, please type your answers in the comments section. Sige, we would like to see your comments. Sige, medyo delay lang yung dating no ng ating Facebook comments, but we are reading them. Yung iba nagse-share pa lang dun sa first question, second question. Ayan, uy, nakakatuwa po ito no. Meron na sa inyo nag-share agad ng insights sa kanilang parents. Mukhang nagkaroon na ng re-echo. Yan, nagkaroon na ng feedbacking no sa kanilang mga stakeholders. Perhaps you had an activity na ginawa and then i-share ninyo yung natutunan ninyo. All right, sige, keep your insights coming. We want to see them. Paano nyo pa po nagamit? Of course, hindi lang naman sa next few days natin agad gagamitin yung matututunan natin, no? But even after this series, long-term, yung mga long-term application, we're just excited to read kung meron na po kayong mga ginawa na or napaggamitan. Yan, mostly ang nakikita natin na sa comment section ay talagang share ninyo yung mga natututunan, ine-echo, feedback with our other stakeholders. Ayan, meron din dito no na personal decision niya, hindi ko na lang po mention yung name, nag-let go siya ng kanyang personal use of a substance. Ayan, not necessarily an illegal drug, but another substance. So sabi niya, as a preventionist, I now let go of this habit that I have. Ayan, so some personal application din, no, nakikita natin. Ayan, so thank you for applying what you have learned. Thank you for sharing what you have learned, and what we are excited the most in the next few weeks and months, even years, is how this webinar series can inform how you implement your programs in your respective schools, in your respective divisions. So magsisimula na po tayo formally, but before that, allow me to just give some reminders and address some of your questions. Sabi po dito, webinar series details can be read at bit.ly 2020 NDEP web series. Kasi may nagtatanong po, ilang beses po pwedeng mag-register? Kailangan po ba namin na pumunta sa link na to? Nasaan na po ang certificate? So all those details ay sinagot na po natin through our memorandum na naka-upload po dito sa link na ito. But just to address some of your frequently asked questions, you only need to register once, and then ito po yung registration link. Makukuha nyo yung enrollment key, na kapag po kinuha nyo yung enrollment key, ipapasok nyo lang po siya sa DepEd Professional Development Learning Management System. May course po tayo doon on NDEP webinar series. You put the enrollment key, you answer the exit quiz, and then pwede nyo na pong ma-generate yung certificate. But may magtatanong po sa inyo, hindi po ma-access yung pong course kasi at this moment. So during our broadcast, sinasadya po natin i-close ang ating course kasi you don't need to take the quiz during the broadcast. You need to listen and to pay attention po sa ating speaker. So para makafocus po kayo, we close the course during the broadcast, the live broadcast, and then we just open it again later tonight at around 8 p.m. where you can access the quiz, pass it, get 80%, and get your certificate of attendance. Yeah. So I hope this somehow addresses the many questions that we are receiving, no? Sana makatulong po itong information na to. And then, katulad ng sinabi ko po kanina, bagamat wala po masyadong interaction na audio or video during this webinar series, pwede po kayong mag-type ng inyong comments and insights dito sa link na ito. Pwede rin naman po sa comment section ng Facebook, pero mas maganda po sa link na ito, yan, na nasa inyong screen, kasi po importante po na makita natin sila ng bukod. Kapag po doon kayo sa comment section nag-type, mahirapan po tayong makita yung mga questions ninyo. So we want to have a record of all your questions, comments, and insights. So please type them sa link po na nasa inyong screen. All right, so I think we have addressed much of your concerns. Kung meron pa po, may announcements pa naman po tayo later, but let's officially start our session. So to introduce, katulad po ng sinasabi natin last week pa, ang ating pong activity na ito ay ginagawa natin in partnership with the Dangerous Drugs Board. So to give us a message, but before that, to formally introduce po ang ating first person to give us his message, allow me to call on our medical officer at the School Health Division. Let's call on Dr. Marie Blanca Piatos.
Thank you, Gian. Thank you, Gian. Good afternoon, everyone. I am privileged. Yes. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. I am privileged to introduce our first.
Sorry po.
Yes.
I think we have some audio issues with Dr. Piatos.
Yes. Okay. Okay na, Gian? Gian, can you hear me?
Ayan, alam niyo po ang atin pong...
Okay.
All right. Sige, so to introduce our first, speaker, let's call on Dr. Piatos.
Thank you, Gian. Good afternoon, everyone. The first person who will be giving his message is a noble public servant. He was born in and raised in Basilan with a family background known for honest and dedicated track record on good governance. He started his professional career as the designated regional director of the Center for Student and Co-Curricular Affairs under the Department of Education Region 9. In 2010, he was the executive assistant of the Secretary of Social Welfare and Development, while serving in a concurrent capacity as advisor for street families and children. In 2011, he was appointed as commissioner representing Mindanao of the National Youth Commission. And it was also during that year when he was appointed as an appeals board member of the MTRCB, or the Movie Television Review and Classification Board. He finished his stint in the National Youth Commission as its acting chairperson during the early months of the Duterte administration. In 2017, he was appointed as the Deputy Executive Director for Operations of the Dangerous Drugs Board with the rank of Assistant Secretary. President Rodrigo Roa Duterte promoted him 8 months after as the Executive Director of the Dangerous Drugs Board with the rank of Undersecretary. At present, he is the youngest official to be appointed to the said post in the history of the agency since its inception in 1973. Last year, in 2019, he was elected as a chairperson for a year of term as the head of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agencies of the Asia and the Pacific region, or the HONLEA. Now, this organization aims to enhance cooperation in drug law enforcement activities. And again, he is the first Filipino who was elected to the said position. Recently, he was conferred with a Career Executive Service eligibility by the CES Governing Board, which formally enrolls him in the roster of permanent third-level career officers of the Philippine government. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Undersecretary Earl P. Saavedra. A virtual clapping of hands, please.
Magandang hapon, Doc Marie. Magandang hapon, Gian. Magandang hapon po sa ating mga sumusubaybay, both online and at the same time dito sa actual platform kung saan po sila nag-register. Ako po ay nagagalak sapagkat magkakasama na naman po tayo sa isang makabuluhan na pagtitipon sa hapong ito upang talakayin ang mga mahahalagang hakbang para sugpuin ang iligal na droga sa ating komunidad. Nakakatuwa po sapagkat left and right yung mga webinars na ina-attendan natin ngayon at etong specific na webinar na inilulunsad po natin ay napaka-interactive at engaging ng ating mood. Kaya nga po akin ding in-encourage yung Dangerous Drugs Board na page para po mag-initiate din kami ng isang cross-post para lang masiguro na yung mga ating anti-drug advocates na nasa mga communities ay makaka-participate din po dito sa ating talakayan. Last week po, kasama ako sa mga maraming nakapulot na leksyon galing sa sharing ni Professor Grace Ducapante at amin pong minarapat na pag-usapan kung ano kaya yung magandang incentive mechanism na pwede nating gawin para po sa mga aktibong kalahok sa ating webinar. So makinig po kayong lahat para po doon sa mga merong active participation hanggang sa matapos po itong webinar series na ito, meron po tayong ibibigay na premyo na cellphone. So yung mga nakatutok, kapag po na-maintain ninyo yung inyong active participation until the end of this webinar, pipili po kami sa grupo ng 5 lucky winners ng ating cellphone na isa-share natin sa ating mga partners on the ground at sa mga partners natin na nasa iba-ibang mga paaralan. So tulad po ng pagkakasabi ko noong nakaraang linggo, mahigit 30,000 views po ang ating naitala ng una nating ginawa, ang maiden segment ng ating webinar patungkol sa kahalagahan ng mga paaralan sa advokasya ng pag-iwas sa paggamit ng iligal na droga. Nagpapasalamat tayo sa ating resource person na siyang nagpasimuno ng ating naging talakayan. I find this continuing virtual session as an avenue where we could place young people in the front line of our anti-drug campaign. Hand in hand with our educators, we create tools that will make them understand the role that they will carry to effectively advocate for a balanced and holistic approach in addressing the drug problem. So no contribution is too small. Lahat po tayo, meron po tayong maiaambag in creating drug-free communities. Dito po pumapasok ang konsepto ng effective at impactful na National Drug Education Program. Hindi po natin gusto na mag-dwell lang doon sa konsepto ng NDEP na for the sake of implementation, i-implement lang siya. We want our NDEP again to be effective and impactful. Ito po ay the same framework na nagseset ng bedrock ng ating Philippine Anti-Illegal Drug Strategy or yung tinatawag nating PADS. This directive was signed by President Rodrigo Roa Duterte as Executive Order number 66 para i-emphasize that the Philippines has an evidence-based plan of action on drug abuse prevention and control. Sa pamamagitan nito, mas maiintindihan natin yung degree at level of commitment ng ating gobyerno para sugpuin ang problema sa droga. Now, with the international standards on drug use prevention as a model, tulad po nung isa-share sa atin ngayon ng ating able resource person, the Philippines formulated educational programs and services suited to the various developmental stages, settings, and specific needs of the members of our communities. For example, yung ating flagship program, alam na alam po ninyo ito. In English, Peer Group Against Drugs. Sa Tagalog, tinatawag nating Barkada Kontra Droga. So the Barkada Kontra Droga, in the school setting for example, empowers the youth and it continues to receive wide acceptance since nagsimula tayo na i-institutionalize ito. So ito po ay isa lamang sa mga maraming programa na ating inilulunsad upang palakasin ang demand reduction pillar ng ating kampanya. Nagagalak ako sapagkat sa topic na ito nakatuon ang ating magiging talakayan sa hapon ding ito. So alongside these prevention programs are activities to encourage more Filipinos to join the anti-drug advocacy. Ang pwede siguro nating itanong sa ating mga sarili, ano ba yung pwede kong maging ambag para tulungan ang bansa na sugpuin ang problema sa illegal na droga. In June 2017, the Philippine government launched an intensive information campaign called Rehabinasyon. It's a combination of the words rehabilitation and nation. Through this program, we inform the people of the real numbers or yung statistics na meron tayo pagdating sa kampanya kontra droga. Real solutions. Ano ba yung mga real solutions that are being employed from the national to the local level? At most importantly, real stories of successes that continue to inspire us to win the fight against drugs. It excites me to anticipate how actively you will engage in this virtual discussion platform, and I believe that everything which I emphasized a while ago will be discussed thoroughly in this session. I am also confident that after this learning activity, we will have more committed and strong allies in the crusade against illegal drugs. So patuloy po nating hangarin ang mabuting kalusugan ng lahat sa pamamagitan ng ibayong pag-iingat. Maraming salamat at magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much po, Yusek Earl. Napakaganda po ng sinabi ninyo, no, na ang lahat ng efforts ng iba-ibang agencies ay bahagi ng isang evidence-based action plan. So nakakatuwa po sa DepEd na maging bahagi, makapag-contribute sa action plan na ito. At ang libo-libo po nating mga nanonood na viewers, NDEP coordinators, BKD coordinators, teachers, health personnel, lahat po sila, youth formators, guidance counselors, ay mayroong kanya-kanyang na i-contribute sa pagsasakatuparan ng evidence-based action plan na ito. Thank you po sa inyong leadership. Pero isa po talaga sa parang napawaw kaming lahat ay nung in-announce din ninyo na meron po incentive sa DDB para sa ating mga active participants ng webinar na ito. So maraming salamat po sa inyong commitment, sa inyong leadership sa DDB para sa iba-ibang agencies kagaya ng DepEd. And thank you po for partnering with us for this specific webinar series, katulad ng pakikipag-partner ninyo sa iba pa pong initiatives na meron ang DepEd. Ayan. So again, thank you very much po kay Yusek Earl for that message. Para naman po basahin ang mensahe para sa atin ng ating chief na si Dr. Maria Corazon Dumlao, tatawagin ko po ulit ang ating medical officer sa School Health Division, Dr. Mariblanca Piatas. Dr.
Maraming salamat. Maraming salamat, Gian. Take 2. Okay, magandang hapon po uli sa ating mga participants. Ito na po ang ating pangalawang session sa ating NDEP webinar. Nung nakaraang Martes or last Tuesday, napag-usapan natin ang kahalagahan ng paaralan sa paghubog ng ating kabataan at kung paano natin ito mailayo sa paggamit ng droga. Today, we will discuss the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, or the UNODC standards on drug use prevention. Ano naman po talaga ito? The development of the International Standards on Drug Use Prevention is an international effort supported by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime to summarize the prevention science literature and to highlight the key characteristics of evidence-based prevention interventions and policies. The purpose is to communicate these effective prevention approaches to improve available prevention services. Marami po tayong ginagawa na mga strategies na bilang tugon sa drug prevention. Pero may mga tanong. At ang mga tanong po ay, ito bang ginagamit nating strategiya ay nakakatulong or may impact sa ating mga learners? Or ito bang strategies na ginagawa natin ay may basihan o pag-aaral na ginawa upang masabi natin na ito ay effective prevention intervention? Kung ang sagot po sa ating mga tanong ay hindi sigurado or walang basihan, masasayang po ang lahat ng ating resources, ang ating panahon, pera, at ang effort sa mga strategies na ginagawa natin. Dito sa ating talakayan ngayon, gagabayan tayo ng International Standards on Drug Preventions. Ito po ay evidence-based strategies na pinag-aralan ng mahabang panahon at ito ay napatunayan na may impact sa effective strategies for drug prevention. Ngayong hapon, napakapalad po natin dahil ang magpapaliwanag sa atin ay isang taong may malawak na kaalaman sa topic na ito. Siya din po ay isang magaling na global master trainers. Hindi ko na po pahahabain. Inaanyayahan ko po kayong makinig, mag-aral, at the same time mag-enjoy dito sa ating session. Muli, magandang hapon sa ating lahat.
Much Dr. Dr. Marie Blanca Piatas for delivering the message of Dr. Dumlao for this afternoon. Ayan, so ang ganda lang din po ng ating emphasis, no, na nakatahi po talaga ang lahat ng mga activities na ginagawa natin sa ating overall direction for the National Drug Education Program. So para lang din po bigyan tayo ng background, ano nga ba itong NDEP para meron lang po ulit tayong update, especially kung marami po tayong mga first-time viewers na bago lang nagsisimula or bago lang sa DepEd, or if we have parents, ano pa yung NDEP na yan, yung National Drug Education Program na yan? Ang atin pong National Program Coordinator for the National Drug Education Program ay mag-share ng ilang mga impormasyon tungkol sa NDEP para mai-contextualize po natin itong ginagawa natin ngayong hapon. So let me introduce to you our National Drug Education Program Coordinator, Ms. Girly Azurin. Ma'am Girly.
Thank you, Gian. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Well, I am sure that most of you know already what National Drug Education Program is all about. But for our viewers who are not so familiar with the program, let me give a brief introduction to NDEP. Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay, let's start with the meaning. Ano nga po ba ang NDEP? Okay, so this is a comprehensive educational program which provides for a holistic approach to the problem of drug abuse. Pag sinabi po ba natin comprehensive and holistic, what do we mean by this? Ano po ba yung gusto natin dito? So it means that in addition to the traditional academic component, we are actively cultivating the development of the whole child, her emotions, her social skills, her spiritual beliefs, and her role and participation in the community. Well, this program was designed to enable all sectors to work collaboratively with the school system as the core, thereby unifying all sectoral endeavors. So this is not just the responsibility of DepEd. This is also the responsibility of all the stakeholders. And we work together for the successful implementation of the program. Next, please. Next slide. Okay, ano po ba ang objectives ng ating programa? Of course, first, we want our students to prevent drug use and abuse through development of desirable values, attitudes, and practices. So here, we are not just concerned on the knowledge. We just don't want our student to know the negative consequences of drugs. Sorry. Okay, we just don't want our students to know the negative consequences of drugs. Madali lang naman po nilang alamin yun eh. Minsan isang click lang nila sa Google, ano na po, alam na po nila yon. But here we want our students to develop positive values, attitudes, and practices learned in school. No, mas yun po yung concern natin. Kaya nga sabi natin sa ating programa, ito po ay comprehensive and holistic. Second, we want to maximize the utilization of school resources which can contribute to the child's cognitive, affective, and psychomotor development relative to drug abuse prevention. So ano po ba yung mga school resources na ino-offer natin sa mga estudyante natin? Well, we have the classroom for the cognitive development. We have the library for the additional information resources. We have, of course, the clinic for their medical and health needs, the guidance office for the counseling needs. Marami po yan. We have the gymnasium for the psychomotor development. Some schools have chapel or improvised chapel for their spiritual needs. So marami po, including our teachers and non-teaching personnel, our human resources. All of these contribute to the development of the child. Next, we want our parents and the whole community to actively participate to all our anti-drug abuse campaign. We want also to provide capacity building, training, seminars, workshops to all our teachers and non-teaching personnel to enable them to help young people enhance their life skills, which relate to drug prevalence of drug abuse. And of course, initiate researches and studies. Next slide, please. So, ma-achieve po ba natin itong objectives na to? Yes po, because the program has 5 components. We have the curriculum and instruction. Ang preventive drug education po ay naka-integrate na sa ating K-12 curriculum. We have co-curricular and ancillary services. These are the activities na binibigay po natin sa mga bata. We have the life skills training, leadership training, sports activities, and we encourage our students to join different clubs and organizations. And ancillary services, we provide our students health and medical services as well as the counseling services. Staff development, the capacity building of our teachers and non-teaching personnel. And of course, meron din po tayong pinoprovide na seminars and trainings for our parents, for the parent education and community outreach, and we continuously coordinate and collaborate with our LGU and other stakeholders to all our anti-drug campaign. And of course, monitoring, research, and evaluation. Next, please. I think that's my last slide kasi meron pa po tayong, for now, ito lang po muna yung ibibigay naming overview. Meron pa po tayong speaker. But for the succeeding episodes po, you will learn more about NDEP. Okay, thank you very much. Back to you, Gian.
Thank you very much po, Ma'am Girly. Ayan, si Ma'am Girly po ang ating National Drug Education Program Coordinator. At katulad po ng sinabi ni Ma'am Girly, we've been doing this for years sa School Health Division at natutuwa po tayo sa mga new insights na natututunan natin. Salamat sa ating mga viewers. Hindi na natin papatagalin at tatawagin ko po ulit si Ma'am Girly para naman po i-introduce ang ating resource person for this afternoon. At least when our resource person talks about this topic, nakakontextualize na po siya hindi lang sa National Action Plan na binanggit kanina ng ating ni Yusek Earl from DDP, but dito po sa National Drug Education Program na binanggit na in-explain naman sa atin ni Ma'am Girly. Sige po, tawagin ko po ulit si Ma'am Girly to introduce our resource person for this afternoon.
Okay, thank you again, Gian. Our speaker for this webinar has many achievements in his career. What I will mention are just few of his significant accomplishments. He is currently the President and Executive Pastor of Life in Jesus Evangelistic Mission Church International, producer and anchor of the Life in Jesus radio program online, airing from Monday to Sunday in 3 simultaneous platforms. He is one of the first batch of global trainers of the Colombo Plan International Center for Certification and Education of Addiction Professionals under the course Universal Prevention Curricula, which these trainings were held in Manila, Philippines, Cape Town, South Africa, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Singapore, and Colombo, Sri Lanka. Former head of the Human Resource Management Office and director of the National Service Training Program of Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Muntinlupa. Lifetime member of the United Nations Association of the Philippines, or UNAP, and convener of the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th International Youth Day Celebration and Conference in the Philippines. Represented UNAP and was head of the delegations during the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Pacific Model United Nations Conference in Beijing, China, New Delhi, India, and Incheon, Korea in 2004, 2006, and 2008. a graduate of the Regional Training Workshops for Demand Reduction at the International Law Enforcement Academy of the U.S. Department of State's Bangkok, Thailand. A graduate of Education at Muntinlupa Polytechnic College, now Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Muntinlupa. Earned his units of Master in Education major in Social Studies at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Completed his academic requirements in Master in Business Administration at Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Muntinlupa. Graduate of Bachelor of Theology, Master of Divinity, Master of Arts in Christian Ministries, and Doctor of Divinity at St. Delight Bible College. Received Certificate of Achievements as one of the ambassadors for peace during the International Leadership Conference, that's May 19, 2007, held at Washington Plaza Hotel, Washington, D.C. Outstanding Youth Service Awardee of UNAP in 2003, a former president of the National Youth Coordinating Council of DDP in 2001, and an outstanding student in 1997 and elected Sangguniang Kabataan Councilor in 1996. He's a servant of the Lord and a full-time pastor. Friends, let us all welcome Pastor Lidl Jones Espeleta.
Hello, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Thank you so much, Ma'am Girly, for that very generous introduction. Salamat po sa inyong pagpapakilala at salamat din dahil binigyan niyo po ng opportunity na maibahagi po natin sa ating pong mga kaguruan ang tungkol po sa United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, International Standards on Substance Use Prevention. Alam nyo, sa totoo lang, pag ito ang pinag-uusapan, ay talagang mahaba po yung mga lectures pagdating ho sa Universal Prevention Curricula. Kaya nga ho ay sisikapin natin. We will try our very best to be able to deliver this lecture na mas maintindihan po natin. At ito pong international standards ay parang ito ang pinaka-sentro ng ating pong mga pagsasagawa ng prevention intervention on the different settings like school settings. Nung nakaraan po na training, you have Professor Francis Grace Duca Pante of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, our Director of the ASEAN Training Center for Preventive Education. At kulig din po natin siya sa UPC, isa din po yan sa magaling na Global Master Trainer. At binahagi niya sa atin ang importansya ng school pagdating po sa pagsasagawa ng mga preventive education or prevention programming which we capture our students. Ito yung tinatawag nating captured audience, mga estudyante po natin. So with that, let's proceed with our topic for today. And this is about the UNODC International Standard on Drug Use Prevention. Ako po ay from Life in Jesus Church at tayo ho ay, kung hindi nyo po naitatanong, nagsimula ho tayo sa preventive education when we were trained by our trainers from the Dangerous Drugs Board po talaga. Nung kabataan ho namin, we were in the Sangguniang Kabataan, we were invited into several trainings of DDB. Kaya ang DDB ho talaga ang nagturo sa amin to have this really, put it in our heart, this advocacy on substance use prevention. Kaya si Yusik Earl, salamat Yusik Earl, nakasama natin si Yusik Earl dito sa ating pong webinar. At ika nga ho ay ang ating education is never ending, kaya kahit na nasa gitna po tayo, we are in the midst of this pandemic, education cannot be stopped. Now the international standards is part of Module 5, part of the Introduction to Prevention Science, Curriculum 1 ng Universal Prevention Curricula. Kikita ho nyo sa inyong screen, kalagay ho dyan, evidence-based prevention interventions and policies, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, International Standards on Drug Use Prevention. Ito po ay na-conceptualize in 2012 sapagkat sila ho ay nag-report sa UNODC ng mga prevention programming that has the efficacy and effectiveness in terms of looking at the output of the program. Kung naabot nila talaga yung kanilang layunin tungkol sa kanilang prevention programming. So this is product of 30 years research. Dito ho sa ating presentation, we will just be looking at how this international standard were conceptualized, ano yung intention ng international standard ng UNODC, at makikita ho natin mamaya yung summary from the different developmental stages of human development and the different settings, ano yung mga nakita nila na may proven to be effective program na pwede nating gamitin. It will not be a waste of time, and we can address it to our policymakers na yun ang programa na dapat nating suportahan. So part of this training, of course, we have the introduction, and of course, this module provides a more in-depth understanding of the development of the international standard on drug use prevention. And this will serve as a guide for our policymakers that will also help our prevention practitioners in the implementation of prevention programming. So as we go along, makikita ho natin ng malinaw sa ating pong pagtatalakay ngayon ang tungkol po sa international standard. First, training goals po natin to provide the basis for the international standards on drug use prevention. Second, provide criteria for evidence-based prevention interventions, policies, and practice. So hindi lang po prevention, intervention, or program, kung hindi meron din pong evidence-based policies and the practices na pwede nating i-implement. At ano yung mga evidence-based policies na pwede nating i-adapt that can be adapted also in our settings, whether in school, in community, in family, in the workplace, at sa iba pa nating mga settings like, for example, media. Now, emphasize the importance of applying a human development framework to the planning and delivery of prevention interventions and policies. Sinasabi ng international standard na kailangan i-apply natin yung human development framework. We must have the understanding and knowledge of the different human development, because the programming must be age appropriate in terms of delivery and prevention of interventions. And for example, if we come up with a policy, yung policy ba natin can be understood by those who are in the age bracket of middle childhood to early adolescence. So, yun yung mga tinitignan natin, especially when we do programming like making a media program. Appealing ba yan sa young people? Ano ba nila yan? Maiintindihan ba nila yan? Makaka-capture ba nila yan? Sino ba yung mga tina-target natin dyan? Now, equip prevention coordinators. Pag kayo ay nagpo-programa na sa prevention, say you're in the school and you're part of the NDEP, ang tawag na ho sa inyo talaga ay prevention coordinator, because you're the one coordinating the program. And when you finish the trainings on UPC and you have been credentialed, for example, ang tawag na ho talaga sa inyo prevention professionals. So equip prevention coordinators with the background knowledge to communicate the importance of evidence-based prevention to policy makers and the public in their area, in your respective area. Nakita ko ang dami-dami ho natin na nag-training ngayon, kahit na tayo ay virtual lang, pero 1,000 sabi nga ni Gian kanina. So learning objectives po natin, describe the advantages and disadvantages of delivering evidence-based prevention interventions and policies. Ang question natin dyan why do we need to adopt evidence-based program. Why do we need to make use of an evidence-based program? Kasi makikita natin yung advantage and disadvantages ng paggamit ng programa na yan. Pangalawa, describe the criteria used to determine evidence-based interventions and policies. Mamaya makikita natin ano ba yung ginamit nilang criteria. Ano bang measurement ang ginamit nila to be able to say that this program is evidence-based program and this is proven to be effective in terms of its structure, content, and the delivery of the program. And then describe the roles of prevention within a developmental framework. Ayan, tinitingnan ho natin yung developmental framework. Ano ho? Mahalaga po yan sa pagdating ho sa paggagawa ng ating programa sa prevention. And with all this knowledge, learn how to encourage policymakers and stakeholders to support evidence-based interventions in your community. And you know, I am glad and I am so proud also with DDB because dito ho sa Philippine Anti-Drug Strategy, yung pong approach, pag binasa po ninyo yun, evidence-based approach na ho yung ating pong demand reduction at saka supply reduction, pag nakita ho natin. Specifically, demand reduction side, yung sa prevention ho natin. Now, why is substance use prevention important? In our previous webinar, binigay na rin to ni Professor Grace, bakit importante ang substance use prevention. Number one, kasi ang ating primary objective of drug prevention is to help our people. Most especially our young people, yung mga bata po, na ma-delay ho natin yung tinatawag na initiation nila. First, to avoid the initiation. Hanggat maaari, wag na silang mag-initiate, magtikim ng whatever substance, whatever substance na makikita nila na would probably available sa kanila, halimbawa alcohol or tobacco, wag na nilang tikman. Ngayon, dahil hindi naman natin hawak yung kanila pong buhay at ang kanila pong will na tinatawag, yung free will. Sa Cherson, tawag natin doon, free will. Bigay ni Lord yung free will. Hindi natin pwedeng batasan yung tao na hindi niya pwedeng gawin yun. Available yung alcohol, available yung sigarilyo. So kung nag-start na sila, anong gagawin natin? Delay the progression. We don't like them to progress in their use of whatever substance. So you can see there that to avoid or delay the initiation of the use of drugs, or if they have started already, to avoid that they develop disorder or yung tinatawag ho nating dependence. Pag nagdepende na ho sila sa drugs or sa substance, malaking problema na ho yun. At naglilid na ho yun sa tinatawag natin na mental problem. Pagka hindi na ho yan nakapasok sa continuum of prevention at nangailangan niya ng treatment, at pag nakita yan na severe na yung case niya sa paggamit niya ng substance, ay nako, ang hirap na ho talaga. Dahil nakikita ho yung tinatawag ho nating napapraning, hindi na mabalik yung kanyang dating natural na pag-iisip. So that is our primary objective. Now, the general aim of drug prevention is much broader. The healthy and safe development of children and youth, to realize their potential and become contributing members of their community and society. So what our young people na gusto natin na mangyari sa kanila, not just young people, but our people, our Filipino people, gusto natin na tayong lahat ng mga Pilipino ay productive. Hindi ho tayo productive dahil sa gumagamit ng substance, kung hindi productive tayo because we are living a healthy lifestyle. So effective drug use prevention contributes significantly to the positive engagement of children. Ayan. The youth and the adults with their families, schools, workplace, and community. So makako-contribute ho ng significant sa tinatawag natin na maayos na pakikipagtunguhan ng mga tao sa isa't isa. Ito hong children, youth, and adults na binabanggit dito, nakikita natin sa lahat ng settings, families, schools, workplace, and communities. Kaya yung mga binanggit po dyan, families, schools, workplace, community, health sector, and others, these are the settings that you can find in the available evidence-based program in the international registry. Okay. Now, ito po ay tinatawag nating Ethiologic Model. And this Ethiologic Model is coined by Dr. Silly Isloboda. Dr. Silly Isloboda is the president of the Applied Prevention Science Incorporated. Siya ho yung pinakang naging professor namin dito sa UPC, sa Universal Prevention Curricula. At nag-serve ho sila as consultant for the creation of this international standard. Now, looking at the Ethiologic Model, ang tawag po dito ay Points of Intervention Model. At makikita po ninyo that there is biological or personal characteristics of the person. This is the individual. If you can see it, nakikita nyo naman ata yung arrow ko. I'm pointing to this area. Biological and personal characteristics, meron ho siyang tinatawag na interaction between his micro-level environment. At yung kanyang micro-level environment, of course, ang kanyang family, ang kanyang school, ang kanyang peers, ang kanyang workplace, tinatawag na micro-level environment niya yan. Yung macro-level environment niya, ito yung situation natin sa kabuuan ng ating pong, for example, society. Yes, we have the economic situation, we have poverty situation, and those who are outside the micro-level environment. So there is a significant effect to the personal characteristics of a person, in his belief and in his attitudes, doon sa kanyang naisin na gampanan pagdating doon sa kanyang behavior. So, ibig sabihin, yung micro-level environment, yung macro-level environment, meron siyang tinatawag na impluensya sa buhay ng isang tao, sa kanyang beliefs and attitudes, in his intention to do the behavior. At ito pong Ethiologic Model ay ikinukumpara natin doon sa theory of learned behavior, wherein, that the micro-level environment and the macro-level environment in the process of socialization, nakaka-acquire ang tao ng kanyang kakayanan kung gagawin niya ba yung behavior na yon o hindi. For example, kung ang kanyang understanding, kanyang pagkaunawa, ang smoking is dangerous sa kanyang kalusugan. At naririnig niya sa kanyang micro-level environment na ganun din ang kanilang trato doon sa behavior na yon. Nare-reinforce yung kanyang belief system, yung attitude system niya towards the behavior. And now his intention is what? Not to do the behavior. Okay? So, kailangan magkaroon ng tinatawag na proseso. Ang tawag natin doon ay in the process of socialization, na-address na yung behavior na yon is not good for that person, or doing such kind of behavior can really help the person in terms of living a healthy lifestyle, for example. Now, pinag-usapan natin points of intervention. Sa international standard, meron hong mga programa that address the individual. Kaya may start dito. Andon ang target ay individual person. Kaya meron tayong mga tinatawag na target population. Sino bang target population natin? Sila bang mga vulnerable that they know nothing about the risk that they are facing right now? Ang tawag natin doon, universal target population. Those who are at risk, for example, sila ho ang mga at risk na tinatawag. Pag sinabi nating at risk, yan yung mga selective. Halimbawa, mga anak ng mga drug dependents, they are very at risk. Ayan. Pag naman they started already to take the substance but not developing disorder, ang tawag po natin doon ay indicated. Alright, so now, merong points of intervention na ina-address for the universal target population, merong intervention na ina-address for the selective target population, and meron pong intervention na ina-address for the indicated target population. Now, meron naman po na not just targeting the individual, but targeting both, no, the individual and the micro-level environment. So, yung bata, for example, kasama yung kanyang parents. May intervention. Halimbawa ho na meron tayo niyan dito sa atin, especially in the Dangerous Drugs War. Yung pong step, yung systematic training on effective parenting. Yan. That targets the micro-level environment, the family. Sino ba yung nasa family? Yung parents. Ayan. Kasama din, siyempre yung bata. Now, doon naman sa targeting the individual and the macro-level environment. Meron ho tayo niyan. Halimbawa po, sa school. Sa policy making yan, dito sa ating pong bansa. No? Meron tayong mga policy that address the whole environment of the Philippines that helps also na maiba yung perspective ng individual doon sa issue ng substance. For example, yung mga policies natin, RA 9165. Ayan, ako. Nakikita ho natin yung mga consequences pagka ang tao ay na-engage into this substance sa paggamit at di lang sa paggamit, pati sa pagbibenta, may consequence. Kung itinuturo natin yan at sinishare ho natin yan, what is happening is that the individual is lumalawak yung kanyang pangunawa at nadadagdagan, nare-reinforce yung kanyang understanding na hindi ako dapat mag-intent to do that kind of behavior. Now, this is the importance of why the author, the developer of this program, is placing this ethiologic model not only in this discussion but all throughout the different settings, whether it's family-based intervention, school-based intervention, workplace-based intervention, environment-based pagdating sa policies. Ang tawag po natin dun environment-based prevention intervention. Makikita niyo ho yung ethiologic model. So much for this. All right. Now, what is substance use? This includes the use of psychoactive substances, including tobacco and alcohol, the illegal drugs of abuse, kasama dyan yung inhalants and other non-medical use of prescription medications. Yung mga nire-reseta ho, tapos ginagamit. Katulad nung araw na ikikwento sa akin, na yung ginagamit, yung cough syrup, ina-abuse yung paggamit ng cough syrup. Okay, ina-abuse yung paggamit ng mga mga rugby and so on. Pagdating naman doon sa prescription medication, ang balitang-balita diyan yung tinatawag na paggamit ng isang tableta na para makapanaginip siya ng maganda, magte-take siya noon. Yun naman nire-reseta lang doon sa mga may problema sa kanilang mental health. All right. Now, ang sabi ng DSM-5, sa Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, yung kanilang 5th edition, it does not use drug addiction or dependence, but rather it refers to problematic use of drugs as substance use disorder or a substance-induced disorder. Hindi na ho tinatawag na addict. Hindi na rin ho basta tinatawag nating addiction, kundi ginamit nilang term ngayon dyan is yung substance use or substance use disorder when we mean it is about addiction. Kasi bakit? Ang ating treatment on the issue of substance use disorder, this is about health issue sa buhay ng mga taong nagtitake nito in the issue of demand reduction. Pagdating sa supply reduction, crime ho yan. Crime ho yan. You're violating certain law. Ito ang itsura ng International Standards on Drug Use Prevention. For your information, second edition na po ito, second updated edition. Yung nauna na maybe some of our audience here ay mga nag-undergo na ng UPC training, nakita nila na yun yung unang edition. This is now the second updated edition. And later I'll give you the link para makita nyo sa inyo pong internet yung pong international standards mamaya. I will give you the link. Now, how the international standards for drug use prevention were developed? Paano na-develop ang international standard? Una nating tignan yung kanilang intention of developing this international standard. First, they wanted to summarize the currently available scientific evidence that describe effective interventions and policies in their characteristics. So, tinawag nila yung mga experts, group of experts, pinakulate lahat ng mga prevention program na ginagawa na all over the world. At ano ang kanilang criteria? Kailangan ito ay may scientific evidence. Pag sinabi yung may scientific evidence, dumaan ho ito sa research. Dumaan ito sa randomized controlled trial. Dumaan ho ito sa tinatawag natin na time series kind of research. Dumaan ho ito sa tinatawag nating masusi na pag-aaral na nagsasabi itong programang ito ay effective. Ibig sabihin, yung mga estudyante na nag-undergo ng training na yan, kung yan ay school setting, sinubaybayan. Kung sila ay middle childhood, sinubaybayan yan hanggang sa paglaki. At nakita nila, yung bata na dating nag-initiate ng substance, nakatapos ng pag-aaral, naging maayos ang buhay hanggang sa nakapag-asawa. Ganoon ho klase ng pag-aaral yung kanilang ginawa. Describing effective interventions and policies and their characteristics. Ano yung mga characteristics ng intervention na yon? Ano yung mga components ng mga intervention na yan that says this is effective because these are the components in terms of its structure, in terms of its content, particularly the content. Effective kasi ito yung, pag sinabing content, mga components ng program na yan na napakahalaga. Okay, at yun ang naging pinakang susi sa kanila na yung mga bata o yung mga individuals that have undergone that program ay nagkaroon ng significant change sa kanilang buhay. And then to identify the major components and features of an effective national drug prevention system. Ano ba yung mga major components at saka mga features ng mga epektibong mga national drug prevention system? Okay, halimbawa, US, ito yung ginagawa nila. They are making use of life skills training because they have seen that this is effective in terms of developing the pro-social behavior of young people. Right, so yun ang kanilang nakita na merong magandang major components na nakapaloob doon sa programa na yan. And let us make use of that so that this can be included in the National Drug Prevention System. Okay? So, ngayon, ang pinaka-key talaga, evidence-based program. Ang pinaka-key component na meron tayo is evidence-based program, product of, rigorously done research and proven to be effective, kaya sinasama natin sa tinatawag nating National Drug Prevention System. The reason why we have this kind of webinar because nakikita natin na ito yung epektibo, bakit pa tayo hahanap ng ibang programa na alam naman natin that it will gonna be waste of money and waste of resources. That's why all of us, not only in the Philippines, but member states of the UNODC, particularly United Nations, is what? Making use of the available evidence-based program na para sa ating pong programa. Ultimately, to help policymakers worldwide and how to support programs, policies, and systems that are a truly effective investment in the future of children, youth, families, and communities. These are the organizations involved in prevention and also helping in the creation of the international standards. So you can see there CICAD, National Institute on Drug Abuse, we have Mentor International, we have World Health Organization, and Inter-American Drug Abuse Control Commission. So who was involved? This was led, of course, by the UNODC Prevention, Treatment, and Rehabilitation section. We have 80 plus group of experts identified, relevant references that they gave us, and they have important note from the expert. Ano ho yung kanilang mga important notes? Binibigay ho nila yan sa UNODC and member states. And then we have researchers, practitioners, policymakers, UNODC field office. These are the people involved, ano, ng mga experts. And then yung geographical representation po nila ay from 30 plus countries. At ito yung dalawang primary consultant. We have Dr. Silis Loboda and Ms. Angelina Brotherhood. Now, this is the world map. Yung kulay green ho, dun galing lahat yung mga experts po natin. Yan. Dito ho galing ano, sa mga bansa na yan. So far, you see the Philippines, hindi pa kulay green. Kasi wala pa po tayo talaga yung tinatawag na evidence-based program that we evaluated for 30 years. And na-record ho lahat narratively ng mga results ng mga tao na nag-undergo ng training. Now, what do we mean by evidence-based? Mahaba ho yung meaning na evidence-based from Evidence-Based Practice Institute in 2012. Evidence-based practice is the use of systematic decision-making processes or provisions of services which have been shown through available scientific evidence to consistently improve measurable client outcomes. Right? So, dito lang ho talagang sinusundan yung development and changes of the behavior of those who are undergoing the program. Isipin po ninyo, sabi diyan, through available scientific evidence to consistently improve measurable client outcomes. Okay? Instead of tradition, gut reaction, or single observation as the basis of decision-making, evidence-based relies on data collected through experimental research and accounts for individual client characteristics and clinician expertise. So you are not just relying on the data collected by our people in the research doing the experiment, looking at the different measurable client outcomes, but also we have the experts, yung tinatawag nating mga clinician experts natin, especially those who are part of the team pagdating po sa prevention programming. Kasi sa prevention programming, hindi pwedeng ikaw lang ang gagawa niyan. Meron ka ding mga kasama because you won't be able to get the real score in terms of looking at the changes on the behavior of those who are in the program unless you have good pool of team with you in your prevention programming. So what are the prime barriers to the implementation of evidence-based interventions? Bakit hindi gusto ng iba na mag-implement ng evidence-based program? Because most of the time, it appears to go against their conventional wisdom. Ay, halimbawa sa atin sa Pilipinas, alam niyo tayo mga Pilipino talagang likas naman ng mga mahuhusay at magagaling yung ating pong mga expert. Kung minsan ay nasasabi po na ay huwag na nating gawin yan kasi meron naman tayong sariling programa. Hindi man ho natin minimenos yung kakayanan at husay ng ating pong mga expert pagdating sa prevention programming. But let's look at the ingredients. Paano nila nasabi na evidence-based program yan? Gawin natin so that the programming that we are doing, it is not just a one-time, big-time event na ang kinuha lang natin is number of attendance. Pagkatapos, no follow-up. Hindi na natin na follow-up yung mga nag-attend sa atin at di natin tinignan kung nagpatuloy ba sa paggamit ng substance o hindi. Maybe in the next 5 or 10 years, yung nag-undergo ng ating pong prevention training. Now, it challenges cultural and religious beliefs in regard to parenting, family structure, gender roles, and so on. Like, for example, yung religious beliefs. So, sometimes they are looking at that, kaya hindi nila gusto mag-implement. Now, requires new skills and specialized training. When you make use of an available evidence-based program, you will be trained together with the developer. That's why it requires new skills and specialized training. Say we have our nurse, we have our doctor, or maybe health volunteers that could be with us, or parents that could be part of the prevention programming. Kailangan din pa rin natin silang i-train so that they will acquire the skills in the delivery of the prevention program. Now, delivery challenge to maintain fidelity of implementation while adapting to the specific needs of the target group and population. Yung iba kaya ayaw mag-implement because very challenging when you follow the fidelity of the implementation, because you really need to document everything. Especially when there is attrition. Diba? Halimbawa, nag-attend. For example, you have 10 sessions. Tapos, nag-drop sila. 5 sessions lang yung na-attenan. So, it really affects the result of the program. And it also affects the entire attendance of those who are attending the program. So, it affects the effectiveness of the program and also the output, particularly to that person. Now, limited availability of resources. It's another thing. Especially, when you buy a program, talagang challenging din yan because you really need to purchase also the evidence-based program available in the international. But as in the Philippines, what we are doing is that we are making use of the principle of evidence-based programs, especially in doing our prevention programming. Requires monitoring and assessment. Napakahalaga po nito. Talagang masusi natin na minomonitor, ina-assess yung program natin. And some doesn't want to do this evidence-based program because it really requires monitoring and evaluation. Now, why implement evidence-based practices? Simply because it has the best outcomes. Gives target groups and populations the best interventions, techniques, and policies that are available. Offers the possibility to deliver services in a more effective and efficient way. Provides a more rational basis to make policy decisions, especially for our policymakers. And then provides a common language. What we are doing here in the Philippines, we'll be doing in the other country. Kasi bakit? Standard. Kaya nga international standard. Standard. Pag sinabi ho nating standardize, ano ibig sabihin natin doon? It is manualized. Manualized ho yan. Standard, manualized, may sinusundan ho tayong direksyon ng ating implementation. Provides a common language. Gives the opportunity to develop a common concept for the evaluation of scientific research. Okay, so especially you as prevention professional or coordinator, it will give you your concept in terms of evaluating scientific research. Natin sa ating pong pagpoprograma sa monitoring and evaluation, assess doon sa resulta ng ating program in the next few months or few years. And training offers the possibility to achieve continuity and more uniformity of service delivery and provides more clarification on missing links. These are the reason why we need to implement evidence-based practices, simply because it has the best outcome. In our prevention programming, we have our common language, right? And then what we are doing in the Philippines, it is also being done in other countries. So meaning we are doing a standard approach and it is proven to be effective. This is just compare and contrast on the issue, barriers to implement evidence-based intervention and then advantages to implement evidence-based intervention. Now, let's go to the challenge. Alam ko last time ay lagay nyo sa inyong comment sa comment box. Just tell me if it is evidence-based intervention or not. Okay? Evidence-based or intervention or not. Just comment on our comment box. Now, use of scare tactics in teaching. Kung sino yung maunang magbigay ng comment, siya yung panalo. Tandaan po ninyo, sabi ni Yusik Earl, meron ho kayong libreng mobile phone for your active participation. Evidence-based or not? Ang scare tactics in teaching drug. Oh, ayun, nagsagutan na sila. Oh, Gian, kunin mo na kung sino yung unang nagsagot ng not. Oh, it's not evidence-based. Yun ang tamang sagot. Sino ba yung una na yan? Si Maria Hilda Dean. Oh, Maria Hilda Dean, ikaw ang unang sumagot. Ayan. So may 1 point ka na. May 1 point ka na ngayon dito sa ating lecture. All right. Now, next. Sino kaya ang susunod? One drug prevention seminar for all students. EBI or not? Evidence-based program or not? Ako, ang dami ng not. Sabihin nyo kung anong bullet yung tinignan natin, ha? Okay. Sabi nung isa, EBI. Sabi nung isa, ang laki-laki nung not niya, no? Capital letter. Evidence-based. Yes, evidence-based daw. Oh. Hindi, oh, no? One drug prevention seminar for all students. Sabihin, one time lang ho yan, no? Evidence-based or not? It's not evidence-based. So, kailangan continuing ho yung ating pong programming sa ating pong mga estudyante. Okay, tingnan natin. Peers against drugs, evidence-based or not? Yung title, nabanggit ko kanina yan ni Yusek Earl. Sa kanila, yung Barkada kontra Droga, evidence-based or not? Evidence-based ho yan. Yung concept po niyan, evidence-based. Ano? Yung peers against drugs. Ayan. Ako may sumasagot ng not. Oh, EBI. Okay. Oh, next. Brief intervention. Ayan, maging maingat ho kayo dito kasi meron ho talagang brief intervention. Now, I'm preparing when we say brief intervention. For example, for universal population, brief intervention. O, pakinggan nyo maigi ha. Universal population or universal target population. Ibig sabihin, hindi nyo alam kung sino dun yung gumagamit. General population yung audience nyo. Yun yung universal. Ano? Ang brief intervention ang kanyang program, ano ang ibig sabihin nun? Evidence-based po siya o hindi? On a universal target population. Tingnan natin ang sagot nila. Not daw, no? Not. O yun. O, tama ho kayo. It's not evidence-based. Kasi bakit? Yung brief intervention, tandaan ho natin, sabi nga natin kanina, continuing prevention programming ho tayo. No? Pag brief intervention for indicated population, di ba meron tayong assess, no? Yung assess ba yun? Yung inyo pong, yung na-assess nyo na meron siyang paggamit ng substance. Ang isa sa evidence-based program na ginagawa yung brief intervention program for unindicated. It's evidence-based. But brief intervention for universal target population, hindi ho kasi katulad lang ho yan ng one-time, big-time event. Okay? Ayan, may mga sagot-sagot na kayo. Alright, nag-i-enjoy ho ako kahit hindi ho po kayo nakikita. Active na active yung galaw ng galaw yung comment box natin dito. Okay, sports as an alternative activity. Okay, be careful tayo dito ha. Sports as an alternative activity, if it is one time only, is it evidence-based or not? Okay, pag one time lang ho yan, hindi ho evidence-based ho yan. Pero pag continuing at embedded yung sports activity into one prevention intervention, ayun, hindi ho siya single component lang. It is what? It is evidence-based. Okay, so ayan, may mga sagot. Ang dami-daming mga nasagot. So salamat sa inyong participation. Alright, let's go to slide 5.21. Substance use prevention that is based on scientific evidence is an effective and cost-effective investment. Ano ho? Cost-effective investment in the well-being of children, youth, and all people. So kung ang substance use prevention is based on scientific evidence, it is what? Effective and cost-effective investment. Hindi ko masasayang yung pera natin. Hindi masasayang yung resources po natin sa ating pong programa kasi We have seen that this is proven to be effective kasi merong backup ng evidence, may research, may pinag-uhugutan na ito ay tama at epektibo. Now, this is the link for the international standards. Picturean nyo na ho. Picturean nyo na. And then if you are going to look at that, makikita nyo na po yung evidence, yung international standards po natin sa UNODC. That is the unodc.org prevention standards. Okay, praise the Lord. Okay, tuloy tayo. What makes an intervention evidence-based? Ano, what makes an intervention evidence-based? Tinanong natin. It is what? It is collection of evidence. Collection of evidence. Pinagsama-samang mga ebidensya yan from the best practice. Best practices. Best practices. And it is not just one time na ginamit. Kung hindi, sabi ko nga kanina, product of 30 years research. So meaning to say, 30 years na nilang ginamit yung programa and they have proven that that program is effective because they are doing what? Evaluation of the program. And they have found out that that is what? That is effective. So collection of evidence, simply it is collection of evidence provided by the group of experts. Meron silang systematic review of reviews conducted by the Center for Public Health at the Liverpool Puljan Moores University. Diyan ho sa university na yan, ano ho, ginawa yung review of reviews, systematic review of reviews, and meta-analysis, ano ho, yun po sa mga kanilang mga kinolect na mga evidence-based program. Ginamit ho nila yung manual search of Cochrane and Campbell databases. Instrument ho yan, ano ho, in the evaluation. Now, ano yung criteria for selecting the studies? So, identify studies of the evaluation of effectiveness reporting as outcome or outcomes, changes in the use or in the initiation of tobacco. Kaya nga, binabanggit natin kanina when we look at the Ethiologic Model, so meron bang pagbabago doon sa person's intent, no, in relation to the behavior? The behavior, for example, is tobacco, alcohol, or drugs. So nagkaroon ba ng changes in the use or in the initiation of the substance, whether it's tobacco, alcohol, or drugs? Ito po yung mga ginamit or mga ni-review nila, no, na mga ina-address na mga substance, tobacco, alcohol, or drugs. When we say drugs, kasama ho yung mga psychoactive substances. All right. Now, in the case of interventions and policies targeting up to middle childhood, changes in the mediating variables recognized by the scientific literature were accepted as identified by consensus by the group of experts. And there is what listed in an annex to the methodological appendix of the international standards. Now, this is the flow chart. You can see here that they received studies for review 584, no? 584 studies for reviews. Doon po sa 584, 286 there, according to the experts, are all epidemiological studies, no? Epidemiological studies. Ibig sabihin, these are only looking at the spread of the disease, kumbaga kung disease ito, no? Epidemiological. 268. And then yung 60 from 584, yung 60 are all studies on treatment. Kaya nakikita niyo kulay pula to because this is about what? In the treatment side already, no? And then 256 are studies of prevention intervention reporting substance use outcomes or mediating factors. And from 256, meron ho tayong tinatawag na systematic review and meta-analysis, which are 137. We also have 60 ang ginamit na scientific design or research design here is randomized controlled trial, 60. And then other primary studies, we have 60. For example, yung time series design, no, in research, for example. So ito po yung mga acceptable na mga research design. Okay, so we have randomized controlled trial or classical experimental design. They call it gold standard. Ano? Kasi meron ka dyan tinatawag na intervention group at saka control group. So intervention group, na randomize sila, selected in random, sila yung mga nag-undergo ng program. No? Kaya tawag intervention group. Yung control group, ito yung mga kasama sa ano mo pero hindi sila mag-undergo ng program. Sa kanila ngayon, magko-compare and contrast ng kanilang results sa evaluation. So that is randomized control trial. There is another curriculum that address these different acceptable research designs doon po sa monitoring and evaluation ng Universal Prevention Curricula. Now, we have experimental designs with comparison groups and we have time series experiment. Now, looking at systematic reviews, these systematic reviews summarize the best available research by synthesizing the results of the rigorously evaluated similar prevention interventions. And from there, they did meta-analysis. So meta-analysis are designed to integrate the findings from the summarized rigorously evaluated similar prevention intervention to develop a statistical estimate of the overall effect or outcome of the program. So, kaya review of reviews. So, they use systematic reviews and they use meta-analysis. Now, let's look at the quality of the studies and intervention categories. So, the quality of the study, criteria to assess quality using best practices, as I have said. Evidence-based program came from best practices. When they collected it, they have found that that program, no, yung from the 584, ay what? Can be labeled as evidence-based program because it has best outcomes. No? Best practices yan. So criteria to assess quality using best practices from medicine and social and behavioral fields, systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And then methods adopted by scientific review bodies. They have Cochrane and Campbell collaborations and they also use community guide. So mga instrument po yan, hindi na natin pag-uusapan yan. Clear, transparent, and sufficient inclusion criteria for study selection. Transparent, broad, and diverse methods used for literature search. Sufficient detail included methodology, study participants, intervention characteristics, and findings. Napaka masusi masyado talaga yung kanilang masyadong meticuloso talaga ang pag-review nila nito, no? Kasi tinignan nila ano ba yung mga methodology, for example, in the delivery of the program, ano yung mga methodology na ginamit nila dyan. Study participants. Okay, kaya nga tinitinan natin yung clientele characteristics, ano? Intervention characteristics and the findings. Anong ginamit nilang findings? Ano yung intervention characteristics? Ano yung component ng programa na yan? So, masyado hong masusi talaga yung ginawa dyan ng mga experts. Documentation and quality of data analysis and interpretation. They need to really document everything so that they will be able to say that this program is evidence-based program. In fact, ang isa sa naging labeling nila pagdating po sa tinatawag na looking at the quality of the data analysis is all evidence-based program must have three major or important category. No? So ano yung mga important categories na yan? Kailangan maayos yung structure niya, yung content ng program, and the way the program is to be delivered. Pagdating naman doon sa, mamaya makikita pa natin yung ibang category no, ng program, especially in looking at the target population, the settings, and all. Now, quality of the data analysis and interpretation is also considered. So we have randomized controlled trials and other randomization and methods and baseline comparability of groups. blinding of study participants, personnel, and or outcome assessors to assignment. Ito na yung paraan ng kanilang research. Amount, nature, or handling of incomplete outcome data due to loss to follow up. They actually need to remove those things, but they have to document bakit nagkaroon ng tinatawag na loss to follow up. Bakit? Kasi nga, kailangan nating may sama yun sa pag-consider ng mga data, no? And then other sources of bias documented. They also documented. May mga bias in terms of the data collected, so they really need to look into it. Now, this is the categorization of interventions and policies from the international standards. We have three important things to consider. First, we are looking at the developmental framework. When we do programming, consider the developmental framework of the target population. Are they coming from these four? Apat lang yung kanilang nilabel, ano? Infancy and early childhood, middle childhood, early adolescence, adolescence, and adulthood. For the setting, they identified family, school, workplace, community. Ito yung major, no? Major na setting na meron tayo. Family, school, workplace, community. Alright. Meron tayong makikita dun mamaya sa international standards, sa summary natin, na health sector. Ang health sector, papasok yan sa workplace, papasok din yan sa community. Alright. Now, target population, ito yung binabanggit ko kanina, we have universal, selective, and indicated. Pag sinabi natin universal, general population natin yan. Ano? Pag selective, ang isang example natin dyan, ang target population natin, halimbawa, mga bata o mga anak ng mga drug dependents. For example, meron tayong tokhang, di po ba? Ang dami na tokhang. Nakakulong sila. Kumusta naman yung kanilang mga anak na iwan sa bahay? Di ba? O ilang pamilya yan. Halimbawa, 30 sila. O ilan ang mga anak niyan. We can come up with program, look into the registry, ano ang evidence-based program that address this type of target population, selective target population. Now, kung indicated, gumamit na. Let's say we have adults na nagsasyabu, pero hindi naman palagi. Isang beses lang, halimbawa, isa o dalawang beses sa indicated na sila. They started already but not yet developing disorder. Kaya sa continuum ng ating service sa prevention, universal, selective, indicated. Pag lumagpas na yan, papasok sa treatment yan, treatment and aftercare. So wala na sila, nasa treatment side na sila. Wala na sila sa prevention. Tayo nasa prevention. Ang school side nasa prevention. Ang family nasa prevention din po tayo. Ang workplace nasa prevention din po tayo. Alright. Now, let's move on. Now, what is included in the standard for each intervention and policy? Meron hong tinatawag na short description and rationale for the intervention or policy. Nakasummarize po yung evidence, meron pong list of the characteristics that had been found to be linked to positive outcomes as well as to no or negative outcomes. And additional existing guidelines or tools and resources. So meron din pong chapter on the critical components of a national drug control system. Now, these are all the summary of this international standard. I want you to look at the screen, and I'm sorry po kung medyo malabo, pero I will try my best to explain this to you. So, ayan, thank you for that. Salamat at na full screen tayo. So, summary including an indication of efficacy. Ito hong family, school, community, workplace, and health sector yung nasa ibaba. Kung makikita po ninyo. Ang tawag po dyan ay mga setting. So we call it, these are the settings. Itong nasa itaas, from prenatal and infancy to adulthood, yan po ang tinatawag nating developmental framework or different stages of development. Which in the latter in the previous, in the previous slide, if I may go back again. So you see infancy and early childhood, middle childhood, early adolescence, adolescence, and adulthood. Okay, balikan natin. Ito na ngayon. Pag daw ang setting natin ay nasa family, ito na ho yung pinaka-esensya ng international standard. Ano? Kung ang setting natin pagdating sa programming ay family, at ang gusto nating i-target ay yung mga prenatal and infancy, sino yan? Pag sinabi nating prenatal and infancy, aba edi yung mga pregnant women yan. Yung mga buntis yan, na maaring nag-start na sila, or maybe they are what? They are at risk. Okay. So ayan po ang available intervention. Yung nakikita nyo po yan. Yung prenatal, infancy, and visitation, which has 2 star. Napansin nyo po pala, meron din siyang stars. Meron din pong indication ng efficacy yung star. Kaya po meron siyang star. Pag 1 star, limited. Pag 2 stars, 1 star, limited. 2 stars, adequate in terms of its efficacy. Pag 3 stars, good. Ang ibig sabihin, good in terms of efficacy. Pagka 4 stars, ibig sabihin po niyan ay very good in terms of efficacy. Pag naman po 5 stars ang nakalagay, for example, sino ba ang 5 star dito? Halimbawa, itong alcohol and tobacco policies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ibig sabihin po niyan, 5 stars, excellent. In terms of its efficacy, or excellent in terms of evidence. Pag sinabi natin efficacy, the evidence of its effectiveness is what? It is really on that star, or very or excellent, All right. So bibilisan ko na ho, no? So pag family setting at you are targeting middle childhood and early adolescence, ang dapat na i-focus mo na program ay parenting skills, which has what? Which has 4 stars. Ibig sabihin ng 4 stars, very good ang evidence. Very good ang evidence niya. Ngayon, may kulay din ang mga boxes. Dito ho sa prenatal, kulay yellow. Pag sinabing yellow, ibig sabihin niyan selective population. Meaning, maaring ito'y gumamit na, itong buntis na nanay na ito gumamit. So, kailangan bisitahin siya. At ang gamitin sa kanya ay prenatal, infancy, and visitation kind of program. Or interventions for pregnant women with substance abuse disorder, which has 1 star. Ngayon, kung middle childhood ang target mo, tapos early adolescence din, ang dapat na program mo ay parenting skills. Okay? So, na-training mo na yung parents, tapos meron kang tinatawag na crossover effect. Pakinggan nyo po maigi, no? You are training the parents. You have STEP, for example. Systematic Training on Effective Parenting, DDB program. Tine-train mo ang parents. May crossover effect kasi bakit? Nagkakaroon ng epekto ang program na ginagawa mo sa middle childhood and early adolescence. Kasi bakit? Yung content kasi ng parenting skills addresses the middle childhood and early adolescence. Like for example, caring for their children, loving their children, preparing for their children. Yung addressing the Maslow hierarchy of needs, in your children, middle childhood and early adolescence. Okay, sana po nakukuha niyo po ako ng klaro. Now, if we are in the school, katulad natin, mga nasa school settings po tayo, mga kapatid. Nasa school setting po tayo. Ang daming program sa school. Okay? So sa school, kung ang target natin early childhood, ano dapat ang program natin? 4 stars yung early childhood education. So very good ang evidence ng early childhood education. Meaning, in the Philippines, we have early childhood education, di ba? The DSWD has early childhood education. Effective po yan. Ang sabi po ng international standards. Tapos, kung early childhood, targeting selective target population kasi yellow, no? Okay, and then sa school setting pa rin tayo, kung ang target natin ay middle childhood, itong middle childhood lang, ano? Gusto natin ma-develop sila. Personal and social skills, meron pong 3 stars. Ayan, 3 stars. So sa school, pwedeng magprograma ng mga programs that addresses personal and social skills for the middle childhood. For the early adolescence, sa early adolescence, ano naman ang sample natin yan? Kita nyo, kulay green yan, ha? Universal target population in school. So, personal and social skills and social influences education. Social influences education, 3 stars. It has what? It has good indication of its evidence or efficacy. So, what does it mean? Punta tayo ulit sa program ng Dangerous Drugs Board. Meron silang what? Life skills training. At saka ang DepEd, meron din life skills training. O yan, no, targeting early adolescence and adolescents. Why? Because the content of that program addresses personal and social skills and social influences education. We may not be using the exact evidence-based program that we can buy from the registry, but I'm telling you, the program that you have are what? Jibing on the international standards. Ayun. Mas maganda kung mabili natin yung international standards. Kung ayaw nyo namang bumili ng international standards na available evidence-based program, magsimula na ho kayong mag-evaluate. Kung nagpo-programa na kayo ngayon, gawin nyo na gawin ng evaluation. Kung nag-start na kayo sa grade 4, hanggang mag-high school yan, kung masusundan natin sa pagiging high school, i-document natin yung kanilang mga changes, ano, at saka progression nila, na sila ay naging substance free hanggang sila ay makatapos ng pag-aaral. Maganda na ho ngayon sa atin sa DepEd because K-12. Ibig sabihin, ang haba ng taon na mag-i-stay sila sa school. Therefore, whatever prevention programming we have, we can be able to follow up. Kasi bakit? Nandyan lang sila sa school. Diba? Mula yan na grade 1 o kinder yan hanggang grade 12 yan, nandyan lang siya sa school. Kaya nga sa totoo lang, nagtatanda na rin ang mga prevention coordinator. Pagiging matanda na rin, puti na buhok, nasusubaybayan pa yung mga estudyante natin. Okay, so I want you to look at this summary that indicates the efficacy of the program. And then I will not go deeper on this. But ang maganda rito, gusto kong tingnan yung community. Sa community, lahat ng developmental stages sinakop niya hanggang adulthood. Di po ba? So community-based multi-component initiatives. Ibig sabihin niya, pinagsama-samang programa po yan that addresses personal, prenatal, that addresses prenatal from infancy to adulthood. Encompassing yung program. Alright, ako, kung meron tayo niyang ganyang program, the best po yan. Kasi lahat ng stages of human development. One thing that I would like you also to look at, okay, so we have, ito yung sinasabi ko, no, sa isa, meron tayong brief intervention. Sa baba, sa health sector, you can find there yung pinakababa, 4 stars brief intervention. Kulay pula, ibig sabihin ng mga target population dyan, indicated. Yung pong sa workplace, so you can find there, this addresses all the target population in prevention, universal, selective, and indicated. Workplace prevention, which has 3 stars. And DDB has also a workplace program. Meron silang workplace program. So addresses universal, selective, and indicated population. Now, I want you to look at also media. Media addresses universal target population and selective population from early adolescence, this is the media, from early adolescence to adulthood. It has 1 star. Hindi ho ibig sabihin na isang star yan, hindi ibig sabihin yan ay hindi effective. Sinasabi lang dito, 1 star is limited. Media campaign, because not everybody are into media. Diba? Especially, hindi naman lahat nakahook sa internet kung yan ay social media. Hindi naman lahat may television o may radyo. But what we are saying is that media campaign is also effective. But we need to know how to create media campaign, like doing, making posters. No? So yung tinatawag nating messaging natin, yung messaging. So meron tayong tinatawag na ano yung mga persuasion theories natin in terms of coming up or creating our media campaign like poster or in social media, doing a video clip and so on. So I think we will be having discussion on media, and this is interesting at makikita nyo na kailangan palang meron tayong mga components na dapat isaalang-alang sa media campaign natin. Okay? So I think this is very, very interesting. Kung inyong titignan, ito pala yung dapat na mga program natin. I want early adolescence, for example. Ang target ko, early adolescence sa school setting. So dapat pala maayos ang school policies and culture. Ayan, tinan nyo, school policies and culture. So if we have good school policies, that is addressing early adolescence and adulthood, kasama na dyan yung school climate, kasama na dyan yung mga physical plant ng skulahan, kasama na dyan yung mga non-teaching personnel if they are really following what? School policies. Kaya nga nakalagay school policies and culture. Baka, non-threatening environment ba yung classroom? So sa school kasi, importante yung classroom management. Very important. Okay, now let's move on. Ako, pasensya na ho kayo. Talagang mahaba itong ating talakayan na yan. Now, what are some of the ways to use the international standards in prevention work? It guides choices of policies or intervention because it assesses those with the best outcomes. Binakita na natin yan kanina. Bumalik lang po tayo ulit. Okay? Ang importante din dito na gusto kong i-emphasize, it adds to our professionalism as prevention practitioners in showing effectiveness of our intervention. We are not striking anywhere. Hindi tayo strike anywhere. We are focused that this is our target and these are the outcomes that we would like to achieve. Okay? Now, infancy and childhood, early childhood, importante ang prevention practitioners ay alam ang developmental stages. Kasi bakit? Tinignan natin kanina na meron tayong developmental framework or we are developmentally focused doon sa kanilang stages of development. So they have different developmental goals. Okay, I will be very, very quick here. You know already all these things. So key developmental goals of those who are infancy and in early childhood. Now, look at also the key resilience factors. Yan. Sino mga key resilience factors nila? Caregivers who are responsive, provide stimulation. Children who learn how to be effective in having needs met, are easy to soothe, and are not temperamental. Now, of course, we have the program. We will not be looking at so very deeply on here, pero tingnan lang ho natin ng konti. Ito yung binabanggit na may mga indication of efficacy in terms of content, structure, delivery. Okay? Now, the content, for example, for visitation program characteristic linked to positive outcomes. So, meron tinatawag na basic parenting skills, support mothers to address a range of issues including health, housing, employment, etc. Now, for the structure, the program, regular visits up to 2 years of the stage of the baby. Haba 2 years yan. At first, every 2 weeks and then every month. But it is 2 years now. And it must be done by trained health workers, to be delivered by the trained health workers. Now, for early education, for example, I will just give you example. Sa content, yung content ng program sa early childhood, cognitive skills, social skills, language skills, provide socioeconomic support to families. Now, for the provision of the socioeconomic support to the families, we have yung 4Ps. Ayan, sa atin, 4Ps evidence-based po yun. Yung 4Ps po natin. Providing socioeconomic support to families, keeping the children in school. Keeping the children in school. Kaya kailangan ma-monitor maigi yun. Kasi baka mamaya, katulad yung mga nababalita natin, yung nakukuha nilang ayuda mula sa gobyerno, pinangsusugal. So kung pinangsusugal, may stop yung ayuda sa kanila, no? Yung tulong sa kanila. Kasi actually, ayaw natin talaga na sila ay maging tamad na lang at hingi na lang sa gobyerno. Ano? Now, middle childhood, I got this picture from the Kids Against Drugs of DDB. You see? Ganda, no? From Dangerous Drugs World. Ando doon si Kid Listo ata yan. O si Barkada Kontra Droga mascot. Okay, so middle childhood. Okay, ito ang cute ng mga batang to, no? So key developmental goals, emergent, executive, cognitive, and emotional regulatory functions. Okay, so you know this already. You're all in school. Flash ko na lang yan. Right. Now, vulnerability and resilience factors. So yung community norms, school culture, kung hindi maayos yung community norms, di ba magiging vulnerable sila. School culture and quality of education become increasingly important for safe and healthy emotional, cognitive, and social development of our children in the middle childhood. So the role of social skills and pro-social attitudes grows in middle childhood, and they become key protective factors, impacting also the extent to which the school age or the child will cope and bond with school and the peers. So problems such as the onset of mental disorders, so may anxiety, no? Actually, ngayon ho sa pandemic, talagang kailangan natin silang kausapin, bantayan, hindi ho sila nakakalabas, bawal ho silang lumabas. Kaya kailangan ho nating babantayan sila because they are prone to anxiety. No? They are prone to some other mental health problem. So kailangan talaga tayong mas look at into the children, especially their vulnerability. They might be tend to using substance na hindi natin alam. And also children of dysfunctional families often start to affiliate at this time with deviant peers, thus putting themselves at increased risk for negative life choices, including substance use and involvement in illegal activities. So, gusto kong i-emphasize yung parenting skills. No? Very important. 4 stars ang parenting skills natin. So, it must be delivered by trained instructors organized to facilitate participation. Linked to negative outcome kung poorly trained ang instructor natin. Tapos, ang structure ng ating pong program dyan is multi-group sessions or it must be interactive. And focus exclusively on the child. Lecture as only means of delivery is linked to negative or to no or negative outcome. Okay, now let's move on. So, we'll just be very, very quick from here. Pinakita na lang natin yung mga ng mga programs. So, policies to keep children in school, building new schools, di ba? Nagpapagawa ang ating gobyerno, tuloy-tuloy sa pagpapagawa ng mga eskwelahan. Tapos yan, conditional cash transfer to families to keep children in schools. So, that is part of policies to keep children in schools. So we have early adolescence and adolescents. We must also know the key developmental goals of these people, no? These children belonging to this age bracket. Right? So just flashing the different developmental goals and then vulnerability and resilience factors. All right. So especially itong age na to, they are in the time to try out adult roles and behaviors. And they are very prone to risky sexual behaviors also, smoking, drinking, drug use, and risky driving also. If they, kung marunong na mag-drive, na ano nyo po ba yung mag-graduation? Na aksidente ata dito sa may Batangas, ka-graduate lang. Okay, nag-happy-happy. So, yun, sayang ang buhay. And then vulnerability and resilience factors, again, for this age bracket, Peers strongly influence adolescents with fear of peer rejection and major concern. Leads to a range of behaviors from choices on fashion and entertainment to experimenting with substance use and other problem behaviors. Kaya yung mga nasa ganyang age, talagang ang mga magulang ay magtututok talaga. Parents' influence remains significant, no, though not always obvious. Protective factors against drug use, of course, the healthy attitudes towards substances and safe social normative beliefs, and then good social skills, resilient mental and emotional health. By the way, sometimes those who are serving as protective factors tend to be risk factor also. For example, parents are protective factors, but if parents are masyadong mahigpit, they are becoming what? Risk factor. So we must be what? We must be balance, ano? Kailangan balance yung approach din natin diyan, ano? And then plasticity and malleability of adolescent's brain opens the door to evidence-based prevention. Now, let's look at again the brain of the child. No? The brain of the child stops developing at the age of 25. I think this has been discussed also by Professor Grace to you. But if you are in the physiology and pharmacology of prevention science, the experts are saying the brain stops develop at the age of 25. Di po ba? Kaya, kaya ang pag-aasawa, talagang dapat age 25 eh. Kasi bakit? Meron na siyang mature way, no, ng pag-iisip. Kaya ang prevention natin based, no, at that age bracket, kasi kung nag-engage sila, for example, ng substance at the age of 14 years old, hindi pa talaga fully develop ang brain. Kaya pag naapektuhan ang utak ng bata, na-hamper yung development ng brain, especially the frontal cortex, yung executive function of the brain, decision making, nandiyan dyan, being a rational person, nandiyan dyan. Kung magkakaroon ng tinatawag na pag-block yung mga substances sa kanyang isip, sa kanyang brain system, magiging delay ang development ng brain. Or hindi lang delay, baka mag-stop na yung development ng brain kung talagang naging tinatawag na nandun na siya sa substance use disorder. Kaya sinasabi natin, napraning na. Sabi lagi ni Presidente, di ba? Nagsishrink yung brain. Totoo talaga, nagsishrink yung brain. Sabihin, pumupurol na yung utak, pumupurol na yung isip. Kasi bakit? Nasira na yung development ng brain of the child, no, because of the substance. The brain of these young people because of the substance. Okay? So, the plasticity and malleability of adolescents' brain opens the door to evidence-based prevention. All right. Talagang kulang ata tayo sa oras pag ito nang pinag-usapan na natin. Now, I will move on to the latter portion of our presentation. So we have late adolescence and adulthood. These are a picture also of life skills training by the Dangerous Drugs Board. Sa isang school po yan. So yan, meron life skills training. Now, late adolescence, their vulnerability and resilience factors, maturation processes described in early adolescence continues in adolescence and adulthood. Then for older adolescents, significant brain changes are still occurring, creating opportunities for poorly thought out decisions and involvement in the potentially harmful kind of behavior such as risky sexual behavior, smoking, drinking, risky driving behaviors, and substance use or drug use. All right. So vulnerability factors related to peers and resilient factors related to mental health, personal and social skills, and healthy attitudes remain relevant. And then in addition, we have mentioned already bullet number 2. In addition, interventions delivered in setting other than the family and the school, such as the workplace, the health sector, entertainment venues, and the community become more relevant. Okay. So, for example, we are targeting universal population or the general population, and we would like to make use of an evidence-based strategies that address this age bracket the best is alcohol and tobacco policies. Kasi nandun na sila sa try out kind of behavior. Kaya maganda yung policy natin na bawal ang alak sa 18 years old below. Hindi ka pwedeng bumili sa tindahan, di ba? Yun ang ating policy. Tapos, tinitingnan nga kung may ID pa, hihingan pa ng ID yan. Sa 7-Eleven, hihingan ka ng ID. No? So yan, so it's a good policy. Now we have the executive order number 26, if I'm not mistaken, on the issue of tobacco, no? Yung pagsisigarilyo, talagang bawal sa mga public places. Okay? So it helps, no? As no, inom ng alcohol at magsigarilyo. Kasi bakit? There is an enabling policy that delay their initiation. Natrabaho lang talaga natin i-delay yung initiation nila ng substance. Now, let's move on. Okay. So, what have we learned from the international standards? Ano yung natutunan natin ngayon sa international standards? Effective family programs focus on parenting skills and family management. Yun. Effective school interventions positively impact substance use, no? And effective policies improve school climate, feelings of school bonding, and keeping our children in school. So, link pa rin doon sa effective school intervention positively impact substance use. Effective classroom management skills reduce aggressive behavior and improve academic achievement. That's why we really need to train our classroom teachers, no, to have the right classroom management skills. Effective prevention curricula improve personal and social skills. And effective counseling intervenes with individuals with psychological problems. That's why sa ating mga school, importante din yung role ng mga guidance counselors natin. Effective workplace substance use policies are clear, and it must be communicated to our employees, and it must be incorporated to substance use prevention, no, in our wellness programs. And because it is also reducing the workplace stress. Now, effective community-focused interventions and policies include brief intervention designed for persons who use substances but either do not need or want treatment. Okay, they are in the indicated target population. Implementation of tobacco and alcohol policies that address access and availability for underage children and adolescents. And training for the staff and managers of entertainment venues such as bars, clubs, restaurants to enforce tobacco, alcohol policies and address drug use and to deal effectively with intoxicated patrons. So, isa din ho yan, dapat natin ding tutukan those who are in the entertainment venues. Okay, one of that example is, sa mga bar, meron tayong mga upuan sa bar na walang sandalan. Actually, kaya design talaga yun na walang sandalan para pagka intoxicated na masyado yung kanilang customer at tumatabingi na doon sa upuan, huwag mo nang bibigyan ng kailangan makauwi siya sa bahay niya, sa pamilya niya, naglalakad pa siya ng matino. Alright? Prevention messages and to support other community-based prevention programming. As we have said that we also have media-based intervention. Okay, tapos na po tayo. Alright, so that's it. That is about the only introduction that we have for the international standards. Mahaba po ang discussion na yan if we go to the different registries of available evidence-based program. Ang pinakita lang ho natin ngayon is how we come up with international standard, how you and the ODC come up with international standard, what are the intentions, and why do we need to implement evidence-based program. Nilagpasan ko na po yung mga ibang mga slides because you have seen already the summary doon sa family settings and the stages of human development and the available evidence-based program. Okay, so with that, thank you so much, and we have questions. Pwede tayo magtanong. Alright. Gian, ako. 6:22 p.m.
Oo nga po, Pastor. Actually, it's a very helpful discussion naman po, no? Kaya nga sana yung mga viewers natin, especially yung nakahabol lang at the middle or yung manonood through a recording, to really pay attention from the beginning, take down notes. Kasi you emphasize really good points coming from the international standards. Pastor, na-appreciate ko po how you started with different entry points or points of prevention. Tama po ba yung term ko? Sa Ethiologic Model, na there are various factors that contribute to a person's use of substances. And yung various factors na yun, marami ring entry points where we can start. At kung tama yung appreciation ko, Pastor, ang gusto nyo po talagang emphasize dito sa inyong lecture is hindi tayo sabak lang ng pasok doon sa mga entry points na yon, but we look at what really works. And hindi tayo blinded because the standards are there for us to refer to and for us to guide. Somehow, alin ba dito yung zero effect? Somehow, that's okay. Well, resources-wise, hindi masyado, no? Pero mas delikado yung may mga present po kayo kanina na it can even have a negative outcome. Some programs can even have a negative outcome. So, Pastor, ang isang classic example, natawa na naman po ako dito. Sometimes we have the tendency na, sige, mag-invite tayo ng mag-speak sa ating mga learners, ipunin natin sila sa isang malaking gym, at yung magsasalita, tatakutin ang learners. So parang dalawa agad dun sa pre-present nyo kanina, hindi siya nagmamatch sa evidence-based na intervention. Hindi siya nag-qualify sa standards. And sabi nyo nga po, hindi lang siya no effect, it can even lead to parang negative outcome pa. But what's your advice po? Kasi some of these activities, minana na natin, Pastor, sa mga dati nating principal or dating teacher na so what we've been doing. How do you advise us to approach this practices? Maybe it worked at some point during its time. Pero in light of the UNODC standards.
Meron tayong tinatawag katulad ng binanggit ko kanina, no? Brief intervention. We have brief intervention addressing those who are in the indicated target population. Meaning to say they started already but they are not developing disorder yet. No need for treatment. So that is for those who target population. Meron din tayong tinatawag na brief intervention sa mga tinatawag nating universal population. But ang danger kasi ng paggawa ng one-time, big-time orientation substance use, hindi mo kasi na-identify kung doon sa estudyante mo, meron ba doon anak ng drug or substance user or baby pusher, you do not know. Okay? So that's why you need to really identify your target population. Kung saan ba sila talagang prevention programming na babagay. Okay? So kung meron ka dyan na 30 students pala na ang kanilang tatay nagmamariwana, nag-use ng smoke or alcohol, di ba? Iba yung magiging approach. Pag uwi niya sa bahay kasi, may impact na kaagad yan eh. May impact na sa kanya yun eh. Nakita niya, masama pala yun. Pero sa tatay niya, sa magulang niya, okay lang yon. So sino dapat i-address natin? Kung grade 4 yan, grade 4 student yan, 10 years old for example, di ba? Grade 4 ata, 10 years old, middle childhood, pinasok mo dun sa ganung programa. Pag uwi niyan, kikwestiyonin niya ng tatay niya. So sino dapat ang ina-address natin? Parents. Kaya parenting skills.
Alright. So yung programming talaga, Pastor, is naka-target ka sa kung ano yung gusto mong outcome. And medyo magiging target, meron ka rin parang, may binanggit po kayong iba-ibang uri ng population, no? Yung universal, selected, and then selective and then targeted. So ang sinasabi niyo po, yung standards na ito, meron siyang parang recommendation per target population, and at the same time yung much of your discussion is about developmental stage. So hindi yung nag-a-apply sa grade 1, yun pa rin yung mag-a-apply sa grade 7. So it's really, and then you look at the different factors kasi instead of addressing the child maybe, ang isa palang intervention is involve the parents. So talagang parang in a way, pag-aaralan din pong mabuti yung program, no, Pastor? You don't just parang parang maisip
Yes, yes.
lang, but there are really. Opo. Ngayon, ito na lang po, may isang question po from Marin Pendon from Davao Occidental. Maganda po yung discussion natin, tapos may standards. At ang isang napansin ko po dun sa inyo pong sinabi, ine-evaluate talaga siya for parang let's say 30 years yung isang program to say that it really works.
Mahaba na nga yung 30 years actually.
Opo.
Mahaba
So question
talaga
po.
siya.
Opo, question po ni Miss Maren Pendon, in this new normal situation, paano na tong drug prevention na to? How do we now deal with young people in terms of drug prevention? Yung mga evidence-based po ba na interventions pre-pandemic, nag-a-apply pa rin po ba siya? Or evidence-based pa rin po ba siya? Or effective pa rin po ba siya during this pandemic or even under the new normal? Or do we need to rethink and retest new solutions?
We have to recalibrate, no? We have to recalibrate the program kasi yung program natin is designed for face-to-face. The available programs that we have in the registry, these are all designed for face-to-face. Even the UPC program we have is designed for face-to-face. Katulad ng ginagawa natin, this program is designed for face-to-face. Mapansin nyo, meron niyang small group exercise tsaka large group exercise. Eh, nangyari sa atin, pure lecture. Kasi ang dapat sabi nga kanina ni Yusek Earl kanina, interactive talaga tayo dapat. Pagka ginagawa natin itong orientation on international standards and other modules part of the Universal Prevention Curricula, interactive tayo din, designed for face-to-face. This is the challenge talaga, no? Kaya nga, I do not know, maybe the developer is thinking about this kasi di ba nila inisip na mauulit yung pandemya nung mga nakaraang already 100 years back, no? Kung titignan natin. So, challenge ito sa atin. Kaya nga, kailangan natin na mag-innovate. So, we need to connect to our students and maybe engage ourselves, no? Addressing also substance use problem to them. So that they will, ang mangyayari kasi dito sa atin, Gian, we want to equip our students, no? Our learners, we call them learners. We want to equip our learners, no? Na magkaroon sila ng tinatawag na skills to refuse, no? In the use or in the initiation of the substance. Kaya pag binalikan mo yung Ethiologic Model natin kanina, dapat yung individual personal characteristics of a person, yung kanyang tinatawag na skills, no, to be able to not to engage into the substance must be reinforced by the two kinds of environment, the micro level environment and the macro level environment, parents and the society as a whole.
Thank you very much, Pastor. Parang kung isipin po natin, no, parang looking at the standards at these theories, in a way nasisimplify niya how we are supposed to do things. Dahil nga gina-guide tayo, nagbibigay ng recommendations. Pero yung pag-apply na lang siguro, that will be the actual challenge kapag nandun na tayo sa field, especially in this new normal. I like what you said that the standards are there to guide us, pero we are still supposed to recalibrate them even naman siguro even before the pandemic. Some interventions might have been evidence-based sa Western context, pero we will need to contextualize it in our own context para mag-work sila.
Alam mo, Gian, tinesting namin yung online, particularly with the Universal Prevention Curricula. Tinesting namin yung online ng core course, I was one na pilot test sa online. Mahirap talaga. Mahirap kasi isipin mo ang ano mo pa ang mga pag-aaral mo pa, no, talagang apektado din. Una, yung internet connection mabagal, di ba? Tapos yung time zone namin kasi galing kami sa iba't ibang countries, so yung mga ka-group mo mahirap. So pagdating sa interactive session, I do not know if all will participate online. That's the problem. No? Katulad lang ng ginawa natin, we want to be interactive by posting question to them, and we want them to be to participate by writing comments sa comment box. So, nagja-jumble yung mga di mo alam kung sino talaga yung active eh. Pambibilis nung diba?
Opo, may exit quiz naman tayo later, Pastor, to check yung talagang na-cover yung buong topic. Maraming salamat po, Pastor LJ. Actually, we have several more questions. Pero when we review the questions, some of them can be answered when we go back to your lecture. Perhaps they ask it even before you discuss. Or kung babalikan natin yung recording or titingnan yung actual standards na document. Plus, we have already...
May link tayo kanina, yung link sa ito. Please, tingnan niyo po yung link. I believe you can download the standard, the international standard. So please check it.
Yes, we created a bit.ly and we will show it next. Maraming salamat po ulit, Pastor LJ, for the time that you have spent with us this Tuesday afternoon. We really hope we could have had more time to discuss, pero we also have gone beyond our committed time. Salamat sa mga nag-stay sa ating broadcast. Talaga naman pong very lengthy talaga yung topic and quite heavy.
87 slides yan. 87 slides yun.
It's actually a good introduction to the it's a good appetizer to the document itself. If we don't have much time pa, this very comprehensive po yung naging discussion ninyo, highlighting the most important parts para po sa ating context sa Department of Education. So again, thank you very much po, Pastor LJ, for being with us. Maraming salamat. Alright, so sa ating mga viewers, thank you very much for staying up to this point. Alam nyo, ang ganda ng naging discussion natin kasi marami sa atin may mga ideas how to approach drug education and drug prevention. And now, these are standards that we can refer to so that when we create these programs, pwede natin siyang consider and to make sure na evidence-based yung gagawin natin. Na hindi lang siya mag-create ng, i-make sure natin that it will create positive outcomes. Hindi siya wala lang or hindi rin siya mag-create ng negative outcomes. So this is the link that was shown earlier by Pastor LJ during his lecture. You can download the international standards of the Unodc, the WHO on drug use prevention at this bit.ly/UNODC DUP standards. Sige, screenshot nyo na yan or i-type and then i-copy, i-paste, kopyahin nyo na, you can get the standards. But still, it's a good reference na pwede natin pag-aralan. Also, we would like to make some reminders. Ayan, una, may magandang announcement tayo. Katulad ng sinabi kanina, gustong magbigay ng ating mga partners from DDP, ating partner na DDP, ng incentives sa mga actively participating in our webinar session. So how do you win yung prizes na in-announce kanina? Just show us that you have actively participated in today's session by sharing the recording of this video, the one that we are showing now. Share it on your timeline. Just make sure na naka-public yung privacy setting. And then add a caption of your personal highlights and takeaways from throughout the session. So you may end of the lecture or even from the opening message, show us that you have really participated by telling us what you learned from watching or participating in the video. So just share it in the caption, set to the public yung privacy setting para pag clinic natin yung shares, makikita natin yung share. Kasi if we only share it to friends, hindi natin siya makikita. So do the same. You also tag or mention in the caption yung inyong mga classmates or inyong mga teachers or learners niyo, parents. I-mention nyo rin sila or i-tag nyo rin sila sa inyong post so that they can be invited to watch the video. You can also do the same for the first session. So dalawang sessions po yung i-share ninyo, no? Kung nag-participate kayo sa first session and then sa second session. And we will make this as the basis, at least for these two sessions, kung sino yung actively nag-participate. Now for the reminders, katulad ko ng sinabi natin, yung memo po patungkol sa activity na ito ay nandito na sa link na ito sa bit.ly 20 webinar web series. please download the memo kasi nandun na po yung explanation sa marami yung tanong. How do we register? Where do we go next? How do we get our certificates? And allow us to answer one of your questions, frequently asked questions na sa ating next slide. How do we get our certificates? Lagi yan na tinatanong even dun sa ating feedback form. So we want to emphasize that the certificates are generated through the DepEd Professional Development Learning Management System developed by our ICS. Pag nag-register po kayo dun sa sinabi nating link sa previous slide, makukuha ninyo ang enrollment key na gagamitin ninyo to access the course at the PDLMS. And then, kailangan nyo lang pong ipasa ang exit fees for each session. So last Tuesday, we had one exit quiz. For this session, we have another exit quiz. And then we have 8 more exit quizzes that will be offered at the end of each session. 2 hours after the session. So by 8 p.m., nakikita nyo na po yan sa ating PDLMS. You have at most 2 attempts para po maipasa yung quiz and to make sure that you really understood the lecture and nakita talaga yung mga important highlights natin dito para makuha ninyo ang certificate of attendance. And then at the end of the series, pag nakuha po ninyo ang 10 exit quizzes and we will ask you to accomplish an eval form at the end of the series, you will be issued the certificate of completion. Automatic po itong nag-generate sa PDLMS. You don't need to ask. Kailangan nyo lang po sagutin and then pag na-accomplish nyo yun, nag-generate na siya. So again, maraming salamat po. Mukhang ready in the field who have been instrumental para po sa webinar series na ito. We only see several people on the screen, but behind the screen, we have our colleagues from the Information and Communications Technology Service, headed by Director Abram, Sir Mark, Sir Pap, Sir Kasama, nasa behind the scenes natin for this webinar. And of course, we also have our Public Affairs Service who has our colleagues there who have been helping us promote this activity. Stream it on Facebook, prepare and design the collaterals for this activity. Maraming salamat po. Headed by Director Udoy, and then with Jo, and then Johnson, and his team. Maraming salamat. And of course, we would like to thank our partners at the Dangerous Drugs Board, not only for this activity, but also for the other initiatives natin sa drug education. Salamat din po sa ASEAN Training Center for Preventive Drug Education na lagi rin natin nakakasama kapag nasa usapin po tayo ng drug education. And yes, to our colleagues at the Youth Information Division in disseminating this information, our Division of DepEd Regional Offices, the School Health and Nutrition personnel in disseminating information kung ano man po yung inyong ginagawa as a teacher, as a health personnel, or NDEP coordinator, or even as a learner. Again, maraming salamat po. We hope that you have a good evening and stay tuned. Kita po ulit tayo sa susunod na episode ng ating NDEP webinar. Magandang gabi po.
The latter portion of our presentation, So we have late adolescence and adulthood. These are a picture also of life skills training by the Dangerous Drugs Board. Ano? Sa isang school po yan. Ano? So yan, meron life skills training. Now, late adolescence, their vulnerability and resilience factors, maturation processes described in early adolescence continues in adolescence and adulthood. Then for older adolescents, no, significant brain changes are still occurring, creating opportunities for poorly thought out decisions and involvement in the potentially harmful kind of behavior such as risky sexual behavior, smoking, drinking, risky driving behaviors, and substance use or drug use. All right. So vulnerability factors related to peers and resilient factors related to mental health, personal and social skills, and healthy attitudes remain relevant. And then in addition, we have mentioned already bullet number 2. In addition, interventions delivered in setting other than the family and the school, such as the workplace, the health sector, entertainment venues, and the community become more relevant. Okay. So, for example, we are targeting universal population or the general population, and we would like to make use of an evidence-based strategies that address this age bracket. The best is alcohol and tobacco policies. Kasi nandun na sila sa try out kind of behavior. Kaya maganda yung policy natin na bawal ang alak sa 18 years old below. Hindi ka pwedeng bumili sa tindahan, di ba? Yun ang ating policy. Tapos, tinitingnan nga kung may ID pa, hihingan pa ng ID yan. Sa 7-Eleven, hihingan ka ng ID. No? So yan, so it's a good policy. Now we have the executive order number 26, if I'm not mistaken, on the issue of tobacco, no? Yung pagsisigarilyo, talagang bawal sa mga public places. Okay? So it helps, no? Alcohol and tobacco policies, no? Inom ng alcohol at magsigarilyo. Kasi bakit? There is an enabling policy that delay their initiation. Natrabaho lang talaga natin i-delay yung initiation nila ng substance. Now, let's move on. Okay. So, what have we learned from the international standards? Ano yung natutunan natin ngayon sa international standards? Effective family programs focus on parenting skills and family management. Yun. Effective school interventions positively impact substance use, no? And effective policies improve school climate, feelings of school bonding, and keeping our children in school. So, link pa rin doon sa effective school intervention positively impact substance use. Effective classroom management skills reduce aggressive behavior and improve academic achievement. That's why we really need to train our classroom teachers, no, to have the right classroom management skills. Effective prevention curricula improve personal and social skills. And effective counseling intervenes with individuals with psychological problems. That's why sa ating mga school, importante din yung role ng mga guidance counselors natin. Effective workplace substance use policies are clear, and it must be communicated to our employees, and it must be incorporated to substance use prevention, no, in our wellness programs. And because it is also reducing the workplace stress. Now, effective community-focused interventions and policies include brief intervention designed for persons who use substances but either do not need or want treatment. Okay, they are in the indicated target population. Implementation of tobacco and alcohol policies that address access and availability for underage children and adolescents. And training for the staff and managers of entertainment venues such as bars, clubs, restaurants to enforce tobacco, alcohol policies and address drug use and to deal effectively with intoxicated patrons. So, isa din ho yan, dapat natin ding tutukan those who are in the entertainment venues. Okay, one of that example is sa mga bar, no? Meron tayong mga upuan sa bar na walang sandalan. Actually, kaya design talaga yun na walang sandalan para pagka intoxicated na masyado yung kanilang customer at tumatabingi na doon sa upuan, wag mo nang bibigyan ng ano. Kailangan makauwi siya sa bahay niya, sa pamilya niya, naglalakad pa siya ng matino. Alright? Prevention messages and to support other community-based prevention programming. As we have said that we also have what? Media-based intervention. Okay, tapos na po tayo. Alright, so that's it. That is about the only introduction that we have for the international standards. Mahaba po ang discussion na yan if we go to the different registries of available evidence-based program. Ang pinakita lang ho natin ngayon is how we come up with international standard, how you and the ODC come up with international standard, what are the intentions, and why do we need to implement evidence-based program. Nilagpasan ko na po yung mga ibang mga slides because you have seen already the summary doon sa family settings and the stages of human development and the available evidence-based program. Okay, so with that, thank you so much. And we have questions. Pwede tayo magtanong. Alright, Gian, ako, 6:22 p.m.
Oo nga po, Pastor. Actually, it's a very helpful discussion naman po, no? Kaya nga sana yung mga viewers natin, especially yung nakahabol lang at the middle or yung manonood through a recording, to really pay attention from the beginning, take down notes. Kasi you emphasize really good points coming from the international standards. Pastor, na-appreciate ko po how you started with different entry points or points of prevention. Tama po ba yung term ko? Sa Ethiologic Model, na there are various factors that contribute to a person's use of substances. And yung various factors na yun, marami ring entry points where we can start. At kung tama yung appreciation ko, Pastor, ang gusto nyo po talagang emphasize dito sa inyong lecture is hindi tayo sabak lang ng pasok doon sa mga entry points na yon, but we look at what really works. And hindi tayo blinded because the standards are there for us to refer to and for us to guide. Somehow, alin ba dito yung zero effect? Somehow, that's okay. Well, resources-wise, hindi masyado, no? Pero mas delikado yung may mga present po kayo kanina na it can even have a negative outcome. Some programs can even have a negative outcome. So, Pastor, ang isang classic example, natawa na naman po ako dito. Sometimes we have the tendency na, sige, mag-invite tayo ng mag-speak sa ating mga learners, ipunin natin sila sa isang malaking gym, at yung magsasalita, tatakutin ang learners. So parang dalawa agad dun sa present nyo kanina, hindi siya nagmamatch sa evidence-based na intervention. Hindi siya nag-qualify sa standards. And it's, sabi nyo nga po, hindi lang siya no effect, it can even lead to parang negative outcome pa. But what's your advice po? Kasi some of these activities, minana na natin, Pastor, sa mga dati nating principal or dating teacher na that's what we've been doing. How do you advise us to approach this practices? Maybe it worked at some point during its time. Pero in light of the UNODC standards.
Meron tayong tinatawag, katulad ng binanggit ko kanina, no? Brief intervention. We have brief intervention addressing those who are in the indicated target population.